Hare Krishna. Summary of Canto 5, Chapter 1. After describing the dynasty of Uttanapada, Shukadev Goswami now begins to describe Priyavrat Maharaj, another son of Swayambhuva Manu's dynasty. Hearing that Priyavrat first renounced and then accepted material enjoyment, Parikshit was very surprised and he inquired from Shukadev Goswami. Parikshit asked, how could King Priyavrata, who is such a great Bhagavata, who is Atma Rama, who is so self-satisfied in himself, enjoy household life? Household life is the root cause of bondage of karma. It defeats the mission of human life. Devotees like him, who are free from material attachments, cannot possibly be absorbed in family affairs. Elevated Mahatmas who have taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord are fully satisfied by the shade of those lotus feet. They do not desire household life. So then how is it possible for Priyavrata to actually, ultimately after taking up this household life, attain perfection in Krishna consciousness despite being so attached to wife, home and children? So when asked like this, Shukadev Goswami began to reply. He said, obstacles cannot obstruct absorption. My dear Parikshit, your words are true. But a devotee who is attached to the nectarian honey like lotus feet of the Lord, whose mind is absorbed in his glories, which are so pleasing to the devotees, never gives up the exalted position that he has acquired as a devotee despite being checked by certain impediments. There are some obstacles in bhakti. Obstacles in bhakti can be due to different causes. One of the cause is offending a Vaishnava. But this can be pacified by undergoing appropriate difficulties over a long period of time, or it can be quickly removed by the mercy of a Vaishnava. The other cause of an obstacle could be that the Lord himself desired that this should happen. Why does he desire like that? He desires like that to teach proper conduct to the devotees. For example, he used the case of Bharat Maharaj to teach us how one should not have attachments. He uses the case of Priyavrata to teach us how to be obedient to superiors. So, obstacles arising from this only increase the devotee's love for God. Priyavrata sought the lotus feet of Narada Muni and he attained transcendental knowledge and he was always engaged in Krishna Katha. But then his father Swayambhuva Manu asked him to take charge of ruling the world because he saw that Priyavrata possessed many good qualities of ruling. Although such an order should not be refused, Priyavrata did not welcome it much. Being absorbed in Bhakti Yoga and engaging all his senses in the Lord's service, he considered it may divert him from devotional service. Uttanapada's descendants up to the Prachetas had ruled the kingdom of earth. But now there was no king because their son Daksha in his second birth took to performing austerities. Swayambhuva Manu, seeing that there is no alternative, wanted to bring back Priyavrata from the forest and make him the king. So Priyavrata and his descendants ruled until the 5th Manvantara. At the beginning of the 6th Manvantara, Daksha gave up his austerities and he then became the king. So Swayambhuva Manu wanted to request Priyavrata to take up the kingdom. At that time, Brahma arrived. Now Brahma, who acts for the welfare of the entire universe and knows the purpose of creation, descended from Satyaloka accompanied by his associates who are the personified devas. So when this chief of the demigods came and approached Priyavrata on the Gandhamadana hill, seeing his swan carrier, Narada realized that Brahma, who is his father, had arrived. So immediately he got up with Swayambhuva Manu and Priyavrata and they all began to worship Brahma with great respect. Narada, Manu and Priyavrata, they presented different kinds of offerings and they praised him according to the Vedic etiquette. And then at that time, Brahma smiled and with a lot of compassion, he began to speak. Now, Brahma, he had this compassion because he was thinking, I've interrupted his bhakti, jnana and his vairagya. But even in household life, I pray that his bhakti increases. Brahma's smile also had a reason. He was thinking, "Oh Priyavrata, you refusing the kingdom is your stubbornness, but I will make sure that you rule this kingdom, and that is my stubbornness. I will see whose stubbornness will prevail." So this was a very joking competition between the grandson and grandfather. So Brahma, he began convincing Priyavrata. He said, "My dear Priyavrata, the Lord's order is actually ultimate. It cannot be denied by anyone. So kindly listen to the truth that I am trying to tell you. Do not be jealous of the Supreme Lord who is beyond our experimental measurements. All of us, including Shiva, your father Swayambhuva Manu, Narada, all of us, we all have to carry out his order. Not by the power of austerities or education, mystic yoga, physical prowess, intelligence, wealth, religion, or by the help of others can one avoid the order of the Supreme Lord. Under the Lord's order only, all we jivas accept bodies. We accept this body to perform actions for birth and death and lamentation and illusion, fear, happiness, distress. Everything is happening in this world. All of us must obey the Lord's orders in the form of the Varnashram Dharma that He has instituted according to our qualities of work, just like how a bull is obliged to move according to the direction of a driver pulling on the ropes knotted to its nose. So you accept with faith whatever the Lord gives us, happiness or distress, in accordance to our actions and different modes, just like how a blind man is led by a man with sight. So the Lord is leading us. We just have to accept whatever plan He has for us. Even a liberated person accepts the body he has received according to his past karma. However, he considers its resultant enjoyment and suffering the way an awakened person regards a dream and thus never works to achieve another material body. But then Priyavrata may say that household life is so harmful. So Brahma said, one who is not self-controlled must always fear material bondage. However, if one is a self-satisfied, learned man and he has conquered his senses, even if he is in household life, he will remain unaffected. Now, one who is situated in household life and who conquers his six senses is like a king in a fortress who conquers all his powerful enemies. After his lusty desires have deceased, he can move anywhere without danger. Therefore, you just seek shelter of the Lord's lotus feet and conquer these senses. Accept material enjoyment, follow His order. Later, you give up household life and worship the Lord in your constitutional position. So after Brahma gave this advice, Priyavrata finally consented. He lowered his head and thinking himself to be inferior, he accepted with all respect whatever Brahma said and carried out Brahma's order. Brahma was then worshipped by Manu. Priyavrata and Narada also worshipped Brahma. And then Brahma returned to Satyaloka, and Manu, he felt very relieved because his desire was accomplished by Brahma. And Manu, with the permission of Narada, established his son to rule the entire earth. So Manu was also relieved from the most dangerous, poisonous ocean of material desires. Now, the question asked by Parikshit Maharaj was, how did Priyavrata actually enjoy household life? So now Shukadev Goswami begins to answer how he enjoyed household life. Priyavrata fully engaged in worldly affairs by the order of the Lord, and yet even at that time his thoughts were constantly on the lotus feet of the Lord, which is the very cause of liberation. Although he was completely freed from all material contamination, he ruled the world just to honor the orders of his superiors. A devotee in general is not afraid of the material contamination of this world. His only business is that he should use the opportunity of this life to execute the Lord's order. So, Priyavrata, he married Barhishmati, who is the daughter of Vishwakarma, and had 10 sons who were equal to their father in their qualities, and one daughter by the name Urjaswati. Now, among these 10 sons, 7 sons were Agnidra, Idamah Jihva, Yajnabahu, Hiranyareta, Gritaprashta, Medhariti, Vithotra, and 3 sons, Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana. Now, among these 7 plus 3, 3 became brahmacharis and they directly entered the Paramahamsa ashram. The 3 who are Kavi, Mahavira, and Savana. However, the 7, Agnidra and others, they actually took up ruling the kingdom. Now, this Priyavrata, with Barhishmati, he also had a daughter by the name Urjaswati. Urjaswati married Shukracharya and had a daughter by the name Devayani. Priyavrata also had a second wife. From her second wife, he had 3 sons. And the 3 sons are Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata. So these are the Manus of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th Manvantras respectively. Now, Priyavrata, he ruled the universe for a very, very long time and he conquered all his enemies just by the mere sound of his bow drawn by his 2 strong arms. He really loved his wife Barhishmati and he appeared actually to be controlled by her, but actually he was a very, very great soul. There is a beautiful incident that is mentioned. Priyavrata once became very dissatisfied with the movements of the sun god around Mount Sumeru, as he lit up only half the surface of the earth while the other half remained dark. So Priyavrata followed the orbit of the sun god on his brilliant chariot and he fulfilled his desire of making night into day. He could perform such wonderful activities just by the dint of his worship of the Supreme Lord. By the power of yoga, Priyavrata had 2 bodies, one as the king and one as the sun. So Priyavrata followed the sun, not to compete with the sun, but to give happiness to the inhabitants of earth. Because of this arrangement, in months like Jeshta, which is very hot, the sun made by Priyavrata was cooler than the moon. And in the cool months like Margashirsha, which is generally cold, the sun made by Priyavrata was warmer than the other sun at dawn and dusk. The impressions of Priyavrata's chariot wheels created 7 islands and 7 oceans of the Bhumandala. He gave these islands to his sons to rule them. A devotee who has taken shelter at the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord can actually transcend the influence of all the 6 material whips, which is hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death. And he can conquer even the mind and 5 senses. So this is not very surprising, if a devotee can do all this. He can do all this only because he has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. Even just by uttering once the holy name of the Lord, one can be immediately relieved from the bondage of material existence. So eventually Priyavrata began to consider that although he had fully surrendered to the great saint Narada, he had somehow become entangled in material activities. So he started speaking to himself. He thought, alas, I have now fallen into this material enjoyment, which is like Andhakupa, which is like a blind well. Enough, no more enjoyment for me. And he was reawakened by his senses by the Lord's grace. And Priyavrata divided the earth among his obedient sons. He renounced his family. He became very detached and he resumed the path of spiritual life that was given to him by Narada earlier. So no one but the Supreme Lord could do what Priyavrata has done. Priyavrata has some achievements to his name. He dissipated the darkness of night. He excavated the 7 oceans with the rims of his great chariot. He marked the boundaries with rivers, mountains, and forests to stop the trespassing and quarreling among different nations. He considered the results of karma and yoga as hellish. In whichever land one may be, whether one is in the lower regions or the higher planetary systems or even within human society. This is because he was a great follower of Narada Muni, who is one of the greatest devotees of the Lord. So this ends the summary of Canto 5, Chapter 1, the activities of Maharaja Priyavrata. Hare Krishna.